Well, hello there. We're here with Sampath. He's the Director of Cloud Technology at Ericsson. Welcome.
Hey, Vika, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. You have such a breadth of experience at Ericsson, leading cloud technologies. How is 5G shaping the future of AI?
Yeah, that's a very great question. 5G is like an innovation platform. That's what we have been saying from the telecom perspective. AI is a key component, especially when you have all the data sources in the CSPs in the telecom world. 5G is going to really enable that in terms of connectivity, and then in terms of reaching subscribers uh, who are going to get benefited out of these kind of AI initiatives, AI use cases, especially in terms of right now in the chat, and then eventually into the voice side of things as well. So it's 5G is a key enabler for such use cases.
Nice. And so how would you classify telco as an industry in terms of like being a fast adopter of AI, or what is it you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, surprisingly, we also hear in different aspects of like a hyperscaler who are and then also the other companies who are into AI, that telco is one of the leading customer base in terms of the use cases, which is like customer care use cases,
Right.
So that's where the lot of innovation is happening, a lot of adoption is happening. The first level customer care executives and agents being supported through AI, and a lot of workflow automation and other key aspects on that space is what is triggered from the AI space. That's consistently we hear from all the top leading players that AI is being adopted fast in telecom, in certain domains of telecom.
Obviously, Gen AI is one of the customer care marketing.
Yeah.
Those are like very obvious use cases for Gen AI. How do you feel that telco is getting to the last mile, like solving the last mile problem of Gen AI? And if not, why?
Yeah, so Gen AI, like a telco, eventually will be the last mile solution for generative AI when it comes to eventually, right? Right now we are in the early phases of generative AI, where we have a lot of text-based ones, and when we go more interactive generation, like a video generation, when you go more content delivery, content creation, and also voice-based systems, that's when we see a real potential that telcos being the last mile delivery, and also in terms of latency benefits. Like we already hear talks in terms of latency, how critical latency for the inference. So there are different layers where inference latency can be improved at the data center layer, and then the model, the way you serve it, and then there are certain aspects that has to be taken care of at the network level also. So we see very early signs now, but as we make progress, as generative AI shows its real potential, that's when we see that telcos play a crucial role in that aspect as well.
I'm hearing that latency is very important. Obviously, if you're in customer care, you don't want to get angry even further, right? Because the chat is not responding on time. But what other things are that you care about in terms of other factors that in telco they look at very closely?
Yeah, so multiple aspects, right? Like in telco, when we talk about IT side of telco, that's what we talked about, the customer care and other things. And then when we talk about the network side of telco, there are operations, like there are high potentials that AI can support in network operations. Like you have heard about autonomous operations, intent-based operations. So those are the sites where we care about a lot about the AI's performance itself,
Okay.
right? And then how reliable it is, right? And then ability to do multimodality,
Okay.
right? That's also very critical. It's not, and then being network is not a single entity. It is like a heterogeneous entity and multi-layered. So how well this can be handled through AI, right? So can we do something about the graph-based systems, right? Because being this heterogeneous connected nature of it. So those are also very important. Apart from the latency, we also need to consider about the multimodality aspects,
Right.
and then graph-based representation. Those are the other aspects which we need to be.
So on one part, latency can be solved through like the 5G. The other part is like inference, obviously. If that gets kind of solved for you, and then the accuracy seems like it's the next kind of
Yeah.
target, right? Got it, in telco. And what steps are being taken? What steps do you see being taken in telco industry to enable multimodality or to increase accuracy?
Yeah, but especially on the multimodality, as I said, like there is a lot of unstructured data. It's not plain structured data here. We have a lot of unstructured data, and there are explorations happening like how to handle this unstructured data in terms of early signs of building what we called a product co-pilot, right? You have a specific product, and then you have documentation for those products, and then how you can have a assistant for that product so that users, instead of reading all those documentations, can interact with the product, right? These are legacy products.
Right.
That's kind of initial phase of things, and then when it comes to the next phase of things, that's where the complex rack systems are building. When we talk about rack systems, it has to be having a multimodality component into it, right? So that's where the multimodality comes in. So you have certain things like a document based, certain things on the images, right? And then you have other modalities as well, right? So when you have to consider build system for the second phase of things, then the multimodality becomes a very important aspect as well.
And so multimodality, is it true multimodality in a sense of you store different modalities of data together and search across it and then feed the outputs of the search into the context of the model? Or is this more so, hey, we can vectorize different modalities and then you do like a multi-vector approach?
Yeah, that's also so the first early signs of that we see only as you described in the first part, right? The multi-vector part we don't see often, but I think that's where we lead into. And then also the graph-based systems, right? When we talk about multi-modality, and then when we talk about building a RAG systems, then naturally you talk about how you can represent these things in a graph, more of a knowledge graph-based system, so that you can interact and build the RAG systems on top of it.
Especially in customer care, it's a very clear-cut use case.
A customer case is like very clear-cut, and then it's a very like fast adoption from starting from 2022, 2023. Now we see like it's like a number one kind of use case we see according to various implementations for that.
Awesome. We actually have Tim Shi from Cresta. He's the CTO of Cresta. They're presenting on customer care approach and like what they did at Cresta in a few hours at RetrieveX. So if you're watching this, feel free to stop by. But also, I hope you can take a look. This was just a plug of the agenda. I think that would be a nice touch for you. But what in terms of like leaders in telco, okay, what's on their mind? What's the top 3 priorities that leaders in telco like you are working on or thinking about?
Yeah, so the first thing is like how to leverage AI, right? So that's something on top of the mind is like for most of the leaders, right? And one in terms of like for the customers, and the second in terms of R&D efficiency within the organizations, right? So we see consistent R&D efficiency improvements in terms of productivity, right? So that would say like these are the 2 very top of mind, right? Like customer success, and the second one, very important one, is improving the productivity in terms of coding buddy tools and copilot for R&D code development, and then how we can efficiently do automation, right, to do some of these activities for workloads that needs to be run in the cloud. So those are the aspects. So first is about customer success, and the second main aspect is about internal R&D efficiency and productivity improvements through AI.
It's very interesting. So does it sounds like ROI of Gen AI is also something that's kind of being evaluated as like one of the KPIs in telco. Would you consider that?
Yeah, I think ROI, like even when the cloud infrastructure is being early adopted, like ROI was the key question, right? So I think in terms of, as we talked about, in terms of the first set of use cases, I don't think nobody is questioning ROI because it's very clear and evident on the customer side of things. The ROI component comes to more of advanced use cases when we go adopt it, how much we need to implement, how much we need to invest, and then what all things we can offer to the customer, end users, right? So that's when a lot of ROI kind of conversation definitely is happening.
That's interesting. And sorry for hopping on and off
no problem.
Because there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom here. You mentioned RAG. You mentioned graph approach as well, so that is completely clear for me. What do you see in telco? Are we using off-the-shelf models? Are we fine-tuning them? What's your view on this?
Yeah, so there is a mix of things, right? And then it has a space for all these options, right? So off-the-shelf models definitely being used in terms of telcos, consumer or customer care use cases, right? So
Right.
there are straight, you use the APIs from say
Interesting.
OpenAI or Gemini, and then you can build systems on top of it. So that's one way of it. So the second layer of things is like when you start building your own AI systems for your operations or network operations, that's
Okay.
when lot of fine tuning comes in picture.
Got
Right?
it.
You can build a rack system. There are options for that. There are teams which is building rack systems as well, and then there are teams which is seeing the efficiency for doing some of the fine tuning with their own data. So these are enterprises and these are network operations. There's a huge data.
Right.
So it's important that you have those data all being used and then fed into doing some fine tuning and then build use cases on top of it. So to answer your question, like first set of use cases, there are like IT or marketing and customer care kind of
Right.
use cases is off the shelf, and then if you go more in depth into operations and others, like you need to do fine tuning of the models as well.
Interesting. Would you say this is just a subjective opinion,
Yeah.
right? Would you say the latter has a bit more ROI than the first one, or it's unclear, and both are very important?
Yeah, it's unclear. The first one is definitely as a ROI on that, right? You start off using it, and the ROI for fine tuning is something is not clear yet, right?
Got it.
How much of fine tuning you need to do, how much you need to invest on the infrastructure,
Yeah.
and what is the benefit you'll reap out of it, right? And then again between RAG and fine tuning, those are the aspects which is still, to my point, I think it's still being evaluated and understood.
Awesome. And then it's the Retrieval conference for AI. So the last question that I have for you is, where do you see the kind of the retrieval evolving, the retrieval space? What would you imagine in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I think Retrieval is like getting its right attention now, right? As you have this big conference here, right? So it, especially in terms of like when you have huge data and then you have to build a search on top of it, right? And then you need to vectorize that and then have this retrieval on top and to build your own systems. I think this is going to be crucial. I see a lot of innovation happening in this space, and then when it comes specifically to the multimodality, right? Retrieval becomes more important in terms of multimodality compared to having a single modal use cases where you have text, and then as we see more progress on video streaming and images, that's where I see the importance of Retrieval will growing more.
Sampath, thank you very much for being at RetrieveX.
Yeah, thank you, Mika. Thanks for having me.